So let's talk about propaganda. What is propaganda? Well, basically, all propaganda is a piece of media that is meant to sway or change your opinion about a topic or a particular agenda. It's often used in politics, but you can see propaganda being used anytime someone wants to encourage you to change your beliefs or thoughts around something or push you to action. In modern times, because of social media, you see a ton of propaganda all the time. Anytime an organization you follow shares a meme or infographic that shares a story of someone who's being impacted by a piece of legislation, that is technically a form of propaganda. And so when talking about propaganda, it's important to understand that you can see these things in both a negative and a positive point of view, depending on where you sit on the side of the issue that propaganda has been created for. At the end of this part of the video, I'll show you some examples of very famous propaganda that you might have a very positive point of reverence for. But I'm showing you these things specifically to show that the point of propaganda is to elicit an emotional response, why those things are propaganda, and why they worked. So there's really 10 core types or techniques for propaganda. There are a whole slew of different varieties of propaganda that I can go over in additional videos, but in this one I want to focus on those core 10 types. So the first one is bandwagon. This is the idea of everyone else is doing it, so should you. This also plays into the concept of FOMO, don't miss out. This plays on people's desire to be a part of a group or a trend. Second is card stacking. This is when you selectively present only positive or only negative information to support one side while omitting the opposing perspective. You see this a lot, obviously, in politics. The third type is glittering generalities. This uses vague, feel-good words like freedom, honor, patriotism, which sound great but might lack actual concrete meaning to you or your community. They're meant to inspire your feeling of pride without really having to connect it back to a concrete action. The next is name calling. This is pretty self-explanatory. This is when you use negative labels to discredit an opponent. Like an example, calling someone a radical or un-American or an elitist or a freeloader, etc. These are all highly charged, specifically chosen words in making and creating propaganda. The next is plain folks appeal. And that's when the speaker presents themselves as a regular person to gain trust even though they hold elite power. Anytime you see a celebrity making a video to fundraise for a specific cause, and they're doing it in their backyard, trying to find the most normal looking part of their home to talk to you from, that's plain folks appeal. Someone you see doing this a lot is Dwayne Johnson. The next is testimonial, and this is another form of plain folks appeal, but this is when a celebrity or respected figure endorses an idea or a product regardless of their actual expertise. On TikTok, you see this type of propaganda a lot, where you can easily pay a celebrity to hawk a product or an idea for you. The next is transfer. So this links a symbol or a value, like the flag or a cross or another form of religious imagery, to a specific cause or a product, even if they're unrelated. What they're wanting to do here is take the feelings that you already have about that other symbol and apply them to this new cause or product. So in your mind, subconsciously, the two are linked. The next one is fear appeals. This is a popular one, and this is when you use fear to prompt action or obedience. Like, if you don't support this policy, terrorists will win, right? We see and have seen fear appeals used in the last election cycle just astronomically, and you're seeing it every single day with a lot of the stuff that's coming out around immigration. The ninth one is logical fallacies. So this is using flawed reasoning to make something sound logical. You can also hear the term false dichotomy or a straw man argument used when talking about the concept of a logical fallacy. And then the last one is euphemism. A euphemism softens or obscures the harsh reality of what you're really trying to say. An example of that is like when you say collateral damage when referring to the civilian casualties in a bombing or in an act of war. You're trying to cover up what the truth is with something that feels less realistic. Those are the 10 most commonly used techniques when someone's creating propaganda. So what are some examples of what these look like? Well, let's jump into that. So that's right, one of the most famous pieces of propaganda that you've probably ever seen is the Rosity the Riveter We Can Do It campaign, which came out in 1943 during World War II. 3 of the techniques that you can see in this are the glittering generalities, empowerment, duty, the plain folks appeal, and also transfer, linking the concept of feminism to patriotism. This next one that you're probably very familiar with is the I Want You for the U.S. Army campaign that happened in 1917 during World War I. Some techniques you see here on this one are testimonial. Uncle Sam is the ultimate authority figure, the emotional appeal to patriotism and urgency, and also the concept of bandwagon. Everyone else is joining this fight. Why aren't you? Now, you may or may not be familiar with these ones, but these were known as the Four Freedoms posters, and they were painted by Norman Rockwell in 1943. And the goal of these was to do things like sell war bonds. So you can see a couple of techniques in these ones. The glittering generalities, we're talking about freedom, security, and our rights. You can see transfer, they're attempting to link funding the war to these American ideals, the fight for our freedoms. You can also see testimonial, as Rockwell had a ton of cultural clout at the time and was considered America's painter who showed slices of regular American life every day in his works. And because of that, you also get a little bit of the plain person effect here. These are just good old regular Americans standing up for what their values are. And then I also wanted to throw this one in. This is from 1976, and this came from the UK, and this is a poster that uses imagery from the Sawatao massacre to illustrate that you should be mindful of buying products from South Africa because of the effects of apartheid. So, as you can see from these examples, propaganda is really a deeply embedded part of our culture. It's a way that organizations, governments, folks try to get you to change your mind, your opinions, your values, the way you spend your money, etc. I wanted to start with these kind of examples when talking about propaganda, not to say that I think that these are negative campaigns in any way. They're super important and historically relevant. But to show you that before we dive into the more insidious forms of propaganda that are meant to discredit and do harm, I wanted to show you some of the propaganda you're already very familiar with. In another series of videos, I'm going to talk about digital propaganda, modern types of propaganda in the world that we live in now, as well as emotional, psychological forms of propaganda. If this is helpful, come join me. Come over here and let's, keep learning together.